Hey, so I just wanted to make another rambly video where I talk about where I see myself in the future, and I'm just going to talk at length about all the different business ventures I want to pursue in the future, where I'd like to see my career go, what kinds of stuff I'm passionate about, and so forth. So sit back and enjoy listening to me ramble for a few minutes. Okay, so I want to talk about what I plan to do over the next 30 years. My plans are fairly ambitious. I've been kind of refining my ideas for the last 6 months or so. Before that, I was kind of directionless. I was just working at my day job. I didn't really see any future, ambitious plans to do something completely out of the box. And nowadays, I'm leaning more and more towards starting my own business ventures, trying to make a difference in the world with passion, with projects that I'm passionate about. So, with that said, let's get started and I'll talk about some of the things that I want to do. So, I'm currently a site reliability engineer, which is basically a software engineer that also does operational work and maintains servers and looks at monitoring for servers and makes sure that everything's running well. And while I enjoy that job, um, it's not really something that sparks joy, as Marie Kondo would say. So I'm gonna keep doing this job for a few more years. I've actually already talked to managers about the fact that I really want to pursue entrepreneurial ventures at some point. So they kind of know, but they also know that I'm gonna be there for at least a few more years, and be a valuable employee while I'm there. But what would spark joy is being an entrepreneur, starting my own business, and specifically starting a business that I'm passionate about. When I was a kid, I was really passionate about space. I wanted to be an astronaut. Um, and obviously, that didn't happen because I'm not an astronaut today. I never went to space camp because it was fairly expensive. You had to have perfect vision, I believe, in order to be an astronaut, which is something that I didn't have. I wasn't in the best shape most of my life. So there were a lot of things that prevented me from going down that career path. Maybe now with laser eye surgery, I could have been an astronaut if I tried really hard. I think that ship has sailed. On the other hand, space is getting more approachable every single year. Now it costs roughly 200,000 to get into space. I think they're going to start offering, space tourism. Once we have a moon base, I think it'll be very feasible for people to go there. It'll probably be pretty expensive, but it costs a lot of it takes a lot of energy to get into space, unfortunately. So I've considered working for a company like SpaceX or Starlink, and I'm still somewhat open to that idea. Elon, if you're watching this, hit me up. We can talk. I could be convinced to leave my current job and work at SpaceX, but we might have to talk about stock options and stuff. But anyway, Elon says that by 2050 he expects 1 million people to live on Mars. That sounds fairly ambitious, and it's on the Elon Musk time scale, which is a lot like Valve time. It might be 2060, it might be 2070, who knows? But I think that's actually fairly realistic. There are a lot of technologies that are being developed right now, reusable rockets, the Artemis system that NASA is working on. These are all going to be really great technologies that uh, get us into space easier and cheaper and get us to other planets at some point fairly regularly, hopefully. But anyway, I think if I want to be involved in space, I'm going to have to go about it myself with some sort of entrepreneurial venture. So that's what I plan to do. I think two major industries in space, uh, especially on the moon and in low Earth orbit, will be the production of food and manufacturing and or construction, taking raw materials on the moon, for example, and turning that into structures for a moon base, let's say with 3D printing or something like that. This is all stuff that's being worked on by a bunch of different companies right now. I'd love to be involved in that process directly at some point, but it's going to take some baby steps to get to that point. And so my 5-year plan is to continue working at my day job as a site reliability engineer. And given my day job, I think you know why my channel is called My Data Driven Life. This is basically what I do. So I'm going to stay at my day job and continue doing this YouTube channel and growing it over time. and whatever money I generate from the day job and from this YouTube channel will go into funding the YouTube channel, as well as setting up a little bit of a safety net for myself. So I'm still hoping to buy a home in the Bay Area, probably. Maybe I'll move somewhere that's a little bit cheaper, but I think I'm pretty close to being able to afford a Bay Area home, especially if I do some sort of house hack, like buy a multifamily and rent out part of it and live in the other part of it, or um, turn a room into an Airbnb. These things might give me a little bit more cash flow so that I can afford, property tax and all the monthly expenses. It's fairly expensive to live here in the Bay Area, so we'll see how long that takes. I expect it to take another 6 months, maybe. I'm going to start talking to lenders and contractors in 2021, maybe as early as January, maybe a little bit farther out. This is an idea that I've been throwing around for the past week and a half, and I think it's actually something that's very approachable, and it might not take a huge amount of investment. I've been really interested in vertical farming lately, and I think I could start some sort of small scale operation, as soon as within a couple years. I think it's not too practical in an apartment that I'm renting, so maybe this will be a lot more practical once I own a home and I can build, a workshop or a greenhouse in the backyard, something like that, or have a room dedicated to vertical farming. I was originally thinking of starting a 3D printed house business because that's something that is another emerging technology that's definitely going to be more widespread in the future. There's a company in Texas, there's a company in Germany. They're all doing really great things, but I think the learning curve is going to be pretty high. I'm going to have a lot of specialized knowledge on a team that I put together, like construction workers to consult on how to make this process work correctly with building codes. I'd have to hire an architect probably. I'd have to hire experts in 3D printing. I am somewhat knowledgeable in 3D printing, but I'm nowhere near an expert. So I think I could get into that industry in the future, but I don't think it's realistic just yet. I think vertical farming is a much more approachable industry to get into. So, what is vertical farming? It's basically indoor farming. Usually, you have multiple layers of plants that are grown vertically, hence the name. The goal is to have a perfectly climate controlled indoor enclosure where you can carefully control the water intake and nutrient intake of the plants. You have huge water savings, which is great because a lot of our fresh water goes towards agriculture. So there's three different types of vertical farming that I'm aware of. There's hydroponics. Usually you'll have racks of plants that are in some sort of solution that mimics soil, and you have these plants in trays. You pump water into them, you pump the excess water back out of there. You have lamps suspended above them. It's very popular, and I think most of the vertical farming industry so far is leaning towards hydroponics. There's also aquaponics, which means that you have sort of a hydroponic setup, but you also incorporate live fish, and the waste from the live fish is used to supply some nutrients for the plants. And you've got this recycling of water between the aquariums and the plant systems. That one's not too popular as far as I know, and it might be a little bit less approachable for me to get into, as much as I like aquariums. But the final category of vertical farming is aeroponics, and you have plants that are suspended in some sort of chamber, and you have water misted onto the roots of the plants in that chamber. This is actually supposedly the most efficient form of vertical farming, and it's gaining a lot more attention lately. So, what I plan to do as early as January 2021, which is next month, I'm going to 3D print a prototype and buy some seeds and see what I can do with a easy crop that I pick. I think it'll be fairly slow at first, but it'll give me a chance to familiarize myself with the technology and familiarize myself with botany a little bit more, which is a subject that I didn't really cover at all in school. So that'll be fun. It'll be a nice little hobby, side project. At some point, I think I can turn that into a business. So once I start turning that into a business, I could sell direct to consumer advertise in my local area, say, hey, I'm doing this, vertical farming. It's, a sustainable green way to grow food. If you want to support research into this area and support the future of our planet, then this might be something you invest into. Obviously, it'll be way more expensive than traditionally farmed produce, and there would definitely be a premium on there. That premium would go into further reducing the costs with successive generations of the vertical farming setup. So I'm in the Bay Area. Uh, I think I think the people here are fairly receptive to that sort of technology and innovation. So it's it's possible that I could probably sell produce on a small scale. Maybe I could get some grocery stores involved or go to a farmer's market or something. I think the Bay Area has a lot of options for that. It's very possible that by the time I get to the point where I'm selling produce, this is an oversaturated industry, which is actually great because the more the merrier. We definitely need to continue investing in vertical farming because as the population of Earth goes up, we're going to need substantially more food, and we need to find a way to make farming of animals more sustainable. I know there's a lot going on in the lab grown meat sector, and I'm excited for that. But I think for a few more decades, we're definitely still going to have farm animals for food, and I think that's another opportunity to basically manufacture the food that animals consume because that makes up about 2/3 of agriculture right now. That would save a lot of farmland that could be turned back into, more natural ecosystems. We could reforest those areas, maybe turn them into residential areas. So I'm really excited about this sector, and I really hope that a lot of people besides me also start to invest in this kind of stuff. I could also potentially maybe refine the technology that I use for this vertical farming and start to sell solutions like that, like maybe 3D print enclosures and 3D print the structures and manufacture the pumps or something like that and sell those to other vertical farmers. That might be a place where I could expand my business. I'd also love to do business on the moon or in space in general someday. I think vertical farming will be great on other planets because, you can't just plant a garden outside. Taking a first principles approach, this is going to be the only way that they can grow plants there. And so any research that's done into vertical farming on Earth could probably extend into vertical farming in other environments that are more hostile. I think there's also potential for me to get into manufacturing my own buildings for vertical farming at some point in the future, 5-10 years out. And this could be an opportunity for me to research sustainable construction and lessen the overall environmental impact of construction on our planet, which is actually pretty severe. Um, Maybe that it would involve 3D printing with concrete or cement. Um, Maybe that would involve manufacturing out of, maybe that would involve bamboo based construction. Maybe that would involve creating 3D printing filament out of bamboo. I don't know. Those are really exciting things that I'm kind of following. So, yeah, there's lots of opportunities for entrepreneurs in this sort of thing. And I highly welcome anyone that's listening to this to just completely rip off my ideas because they're not really my ideas to begin with. So what I'm basically saying is completely rip off everything and make your own vertical farming business or make your own 3D printed house business or something like that. Because the more the merrier, and the more engagement we have in this sector, the faster we can save our planet. There are some other space related technologies that I'm really excited about. I don't know how feasible it is for me to work on this in the future, but I'd love to if I have the opportunity. One of those technologies is called the Skyhook. You have a structure that is rotating. One end protrudes into the atmosphere, and spacecraft can hook onto that tether and be propelled upwards into space using the rotational energy of the structure. And I think we actually have the materials to build this sort of thing today. And this would greatly reduce the cost of getting people into space because right now the fuel requirements to get even a small payload into space is enormous. We're talking thousands of dollars per pound, or per kilogram of payload. That will come down over time, but with chemical rockets, we're pretty limited as far as how much we can push the needle in energy savings. And even most rocket fuel has an environmental impact on the planet that contributes to greenhouse gases. Of course, there are some types like methane based rocket fuel that's, a little less impactful, but they still have an impact. So we definitely want to reduce our dependence on chemical rockets if we can. And then there's also the concept of a space tower, which uses active support. You have cables that hold a buoyant tower tethered to the ground. And these are a little bit more feasible right now with current technology than space elevators. Space elevators are probably the ones that you've heard of before. You have a tether that is attached to a counterweight that's thousands of kilometers out in space, and we currently don't have any material that can support that sort of tether. But on the other hand, with active support space towers, you could have a tower that's, 10, 20 kilometers up in space that is supported by these cables that are attached to the Earth. You still have to deal with stuff like adverse weather and wind and, sabotage. There's still a lot of problems to solve, but from a materials science point of view, I think this is very feasible with today's technology. And if you have some sort of elevator that goes up this tower, you could launch from the top of the tower and actually have a huge amount of savings in rocket fuel cost. These are really ambitious technologies that I really hope people work on and invest time and money into, because I think they'll be essential to making us a multiplanetary species and essential to us having, millions of people on Mars, or have a Venus colony, or something on Saturn's moons or Jupiter's moons. That would be really exciting, but we have a lot of challenges to solve before we're at that point. I'd love to be involved in solving those challenges. So we'll see, maybe 10, 20 years down the line. I think it's somewhat feasible for me to get to that point. It's going to take a lot of hard work. Outside of manufacturing and vertical farming and space stuff, I'd also still like to be involved in crypto. I talked on an earlier video about the possibility of maybe privatizing, universal basic income. I'm still kind of throwing around an idea of what an app like that might look like. I think it's a very feasible thing. It might just take a few years for, regulation around cryptocurrencies to catch up. Once things are a little bit more regulated, then maybe I could start looking into doing that. Obviously, all of these business ventures will probably conflict with my current job, so at some point I'm going to have to cut the cord and quit my day job to pursue these business ventures. But that's okay. In the meantime, I'm going to keep investing and saving money from my day job and from this YouTube channel. Hopefully, I can find ways to monetize this as well. That's just the reality of things. I'm going to turn on ads as soon as I can monetize. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to, take on sponsors as soon as they start reaching out to me. Quality sponsors, probably like Audible and Brilliant and Squarespace and, stuff like that, not Raid Shadow Legends. I am definitely saying no to Raid Shadow Legends because that looks like a predatory game if I've ever seen one. But anyway, I think there's a lot of potential for entrepreneurs, and I highly suggest that you consider doing this kind of stuff as well. Especially if you're not too excited about your day job. There's opportunity out there. You just have to put in the hard work. If you want to, talk about this sort of stuff, then I'm happy to talk on my Discord. Let's talk and we'll figure all this out together. Hit the like button and let me know in the comments if you like this kind of video where I just ramble about a topic. I really enjoy making these. I don't know how useful these are for you guys, and I don't know how engaging they are. Once I have a lot more analytics on my channel, I can start to look at the retention rate and see if these kinds of videos are a good idea or not. But for now, I'm going to keep making them because I enjoy them. I'm also going to make videos where I offer tips, like that video where I offered tips on how to focus. I've got my investing tutorial series that's in the works. I've got some other video ideas that I'm going to work on in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for all of that. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get notifications about all my videos. I'm going to try to target one video per week for the time being. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. I'm not going to have a set schedule just yet, but eventually I do want to have a set schedule. But for now, expect roughly one video a week, maybe a little bit more than one video a week, especially during this tutorial series. But yeah, I will see you guys next time on another episode of My Data Driven Life. Bye.